Coming up on this episode of Belief Hole.
All throughout history, you have cultures, civilizations that believe that their ancestors, people that brought them knowledge and civilization, came from inside the earth. In Celtic mythology, people came from underground, they introduced Druidism, and then they went back underground, just giving a little bit, like the Prometheus, a little bit of the fire of knowledge, and then disappearing into the night. You've got ancient cultures around the world that are still in existence today that discuss even older civilizations that all came up and imparted their knowledge and wisdom. And they might ride dinosaurs, they might hunt mammoths. I want a dinotopia to exist underneath our feet, where people are still riding brontosauruses and flying around on pterodactyls.
And Chris Pratt is...
He's running around under the earth, fighting velociraptors, or befriending them.
Jeff Goldblum never ages.
He's their god. Okay, so lizard people.
This is mountain ranges underneath the earth, is what they're saying.
Yes, mountain ranges and open tracts of land.
What does that mean, though? Is that like there's...
I think the takeaway from all this is there's multiple disciplines rethinking the interior of the earth. So we don't know, I think, is the point. Where the more we're learning, the more we realize we don't really know.
It's a mystery.
This sky looks high, right? When you've got those cumulonimbus thunderclouds rolling in, apparently inside the earth, according to some of these new seismic studies that have come out, the depth of these mountain ranges and plains are deeper than we are to our own atmosphere. It's more sky than we have here. And the inside of the earth is a lot more room. So not so claustrophobic anymore when you think about caverns in the earth.
It looks like you're drinking urine.
It does, Chris. This is good for you.
Doesn't it look like pee?
Yeah. No, but this is Chardonnay. It's just in a old Frappuccino bottle because I haven't washed my wine glasses.
Conspiracy.
Synchronicity. Sasquatch.
Donald Trump.
Alien races. Satanism in Hollywood.
MK Ultra. Pleiadians.
Mandela effect.
Close the door, Ed.
Jeremy! Close your door!
Snowflakes.
Inner Earth. Disagreements.
My lab.
JFK assassination.
Flat Earth.
Corey Feld. Magicians are demons.
Specters and
Benghazi. Sleep paralysis. Muslim Islamicists. The gender spectrum.
Yes!
Alternative history. Shadow people.
Shh, quiet, I'm trying to say words with the mouth.
Psilocybin. Sorcery. Poltergeists.
Sulforaphane.
Evolution. Is it real?
Skull and Bones. Elf Tower. I would never talk about it. That's old. Y2K.
Cover-ups. The Oklahoma City bombing. Vampire.
What's going on?
Well, hello. Welcome back, guys. It's been a bit. We had some catastrophes occur over the past month. Yeah.
Flooding and funerals.
The dreaded double F. Yeah, we
Dreaded double up.
That's very common.
Very on.
Well, they come in tandem.
A funeral is like a flood in a way.
I feel like that'd be a movie with Hugh
It's
Grant.
an emotional flood of human.
It's true. Emotional flood of human.
Could have probably said that a little better, but...
It is, you get all the flood of family that comes in, flood of love and sharing of good
flood
times.
of tears.
It was our grandmother who lived to the ripe old age of 99, had a wonderful life, and she went peacefully into the night, so it wasn't... Yeah, I think it was a good departure for her to leave this terrestrial plane. Yeah. But yeah, it was sad, but definitely, she's partying up top. Yeah, thanks, guys. So I hope you've enjoyed the beginning of our funeral podcast episode. Well, we had some kind of belief-hole-esque sort of situations happen with that. Like, John, did you kind of sense something?
I did, and then I had another dream, too, before a funeral.
You did?
Yeah.
With Mima?
Yeah.
With Nana? We never had cool nicknames for her.
She was walking around really fast with stonewashed jeans on.
That's
and
right.
Smiling at me, and she seemed very at peace.
That's good.
Or she wasn't at peace. She was running around.
Partying.
Yeah.
She had stuff to do.
Enjoying her legs.
So she looked younger?
She didn't really... I mean, she looked younger.
Well, she looked 99,
She looked
probably.
vibrant, but she still looked old. Because I think partly because I only knew her when she was old. She always kind of had She just looked old even when we were little kids.
Right. Yeah, she always looked like a grandma.
She's always been 75.
Yeah. Well, Mom was the youngest, so she was,
That's true.
99, we're in our 30s, so. Yeah, it does seem like that people, they get old at a certain point and then they just stay old. Yeah. Like pictures of grandma when she was like 50, 60, she still had that same perm for the next 40 years. Beautiful woman. I had that experience here, a little different than John's, when it was the night before grandma died. And I woke up in the morning to a young woman's voice going, "Hey." And opened my eyes, and I was in the studio. It's late night. And then I was like, okay, because I knew in my mind, I was thinking like, she's on her way out. What if it's her? But it definitely felt like a presence there.
So I just said, Grandma, that's you. Do something, say goodbye somehow. And then I had that weird warm vibration come over me and hold me. Oh, embrace. And then I just drifted off to sleep.
Oh,
John didn't like the story, so he gave me the bell. But
No, I liked it. What do you mean? The bell is for encouragement.
Yeah, I like that. It's like a reward treat.
It's a double bell.
Pavlov's dog.
It's a confusing
Action.
bell.
Oh, now Chris is he's going to the fridge.
Yep, I'm going to get my cookie.
He's been trained.
He just gets up, moves the mic to the side.
Time for a refill of whiskey. That was neat.
That's
and then
nice.
mom channeled Grandma, it seemed like, at dinner, which
That
was interesting.
odd. Yeah.
Oh man, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
great.
She's
That
like,
was
it's
weird.
She was like, it's nice that John and Chris, that she came to you guys and you had that kind of experience. You felt that she had touched base before moving on, but she, nothing happened for me, but it's nice that you had that. And like a minute later, she's like, I just need to say thank you.
She started crying.
She said, thank you for loving my mother.
That's right.
But when she said it, her whole face changed and she looked different. She started crying out of of course
she was
cries
saying
at
like,
everything,
thank you so much for being there at the end and visiting. It meant so much
Yeah.
to me. And she's like, I just feel like I have to. Mama's saying this through
and
me.
then it passed. And then she it lifted off
was
of
very
her.
intense.
And she was
It
back,
was
Yeah.
very
she was
strange.
back to mean Janine.
The strange thing about
running around.
The strange thing about that was we were all thinking the same thing at the same time when we were watching her talk, unbeknownst to each other. I was thinking, she looks different. She just looks. I've never
Mom?
seen Mom sound or look like this.
She did
Something
look
about her
different, yeah.
changed. And then after she said that, she's like, that was so weird. I feel like Grandma was talking through me right there. And
Some
then
people said something just came over me.
yeah, and then we were all like, yeah, you look different. You sounded. It was, I don't know, it was strange. It wasn't a scary thing. Obviously, it was like a kind of it was just strange.
Yeah.
Beautifully strange.
And that connects perfectly to our topic today, the Hollow Earth.
See how we tied
Grandma
that together?
is in Shambhala,
She's down there riding brontosauruses.
flying through Agartha.
Well, the afterlife is inside the earth now, apparently.
Is it?
Some Tibetans believe that Shambhala can only be accessed, that's like the mythical city in Tibetan folklore, that it can only be accessed through spiritual meditation and through a spiritual channel and not cavern through the Hollow Earth. Yeah, so it does connect.
Huh.
We just connected it right up.
Shambhala. How does that correlate to Shangri-La?
That's actually
Is it a different tradition? Or?
No, it's actually supposedly the inspiration for the idea of Shangri-La.
Oh.
It's a connective.
Oh, is Shangri-La like a fictitious sort of historically fictional
Yeah, I don't know
kind
the
of
background
thing?
of Shangri-La, but Shambhala. Am I saying that right? Shambhala?
Shambhala?
Shambhala.
All I know is this show is probably going to be censored on YouTube.
Oh yeah, it's odd.
It's a Hollow Earth?
It's weird. Yeah,
It's the same thing as Flat Earth.
used to-
You can find them, but they're not going to recommend them if they were potential to recommend.
This is what's weird is I was looking at the Hollow Earth. I used to fall asleep to Hollow Earth videos. There used to be this one. It was like a 1970s reenactment, and it would be like there'd be people walking in robes in some Druidic fashion. It would say, "In the city of Agartha, deep below the Earth's surface," and I would drift off. And
It's good sleep voice.
and there was tons of videos. Brooks Agnew. We'll talk about him a little bit. A lot of videos about Hollow Earth. But you look at it now on YouTube, and it's like the first couple are like Skeptoid magazine. Why do people live in the Hollow Earth? It's very similar to Flat Earth. You just can't find as much as you used to be able to,
Yeah.
and it's been there buried.
And
Christian,
it's
do you guys
just
notice that
it's like
out
a
there?
slow purge. It's just continuing to they're like slowly turning the valve and shutting off more and more of that stuff.
Anything
and
that's
at some
woo-
point it's just not going to be there anymore.
Yeah. So
Or at least in very limited
those of you that are
states.
listening on YouTube, we're gonna definitely be migrating. Well, check out our podcast for sure. Any podcast platforms.
Because
and stuff.
YouTube is not going to be wanting this kind of content in the long run. They've made that pretty clear that they're not interested in any sort of
Anything
opposing viewpoints from the mainstream.
Yeah.
We'll keep uploading to YouTube.
Yeah, we
but-
definitely
yeah.
will. I don't think we're actually probably going to get kicked off there. I just think that it's much harder to
Get recommended for these topics.
Right. So if you are on YouTube right now and if you share it, it does supposedly help.
Yeah. Yeah. So keep, if we ever disappear from the face of your platforms, just go to beliefful.com and we will still exist there for as long as
Yeah, I
humanly
think we'll be okay for it. Spotify's doing
Yeah, I'm
great
not worried
too.
about it.
Yeah.
Right now, we're just hoping to grow. And we appreciate everyone who's
We're
helping us
not worried
right now.
about dying right now.
No, sorry. This is very bleak at the beginning of this episode. Funerals, death
Floods.
of YouTube.
Oh yeah, last thing I wanted to say before we get into the news was I just wanted to talk about the flood that came through the studio.
Oh, yeah.
So we had a pretty astounding water rise here in our hometown, and it was made national
Can
news.
we say our hometown? Is that too?
I think at this point we probably could.
I don't think we really need to.
Okay, well, it's a town along the Ohio Erie Canal,
Only
and,
accessible through inner earth channels. Or
but it
meditation.
flooded pretty astoundingly. I think
Did you say
1977.
a small town along the Ohio and Erie Canal? So
did.
like
There's a
one
lot.
of three.
No, it goes,
No,
that
there's
goes
a lot.
from
I
New
know there's a
York
lot.
down to Tippecanoe.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
The Erie Canal starts in New York,
Yeah.
and then Ohio Erie.
So back to the flood.
So the flood, The last time it got this bad was like the 70s, where we got really lucky. We sandbagged our entranceway, so we were able to block most of the incoming water, but we had some side properties. We shared a door. It kind of came down like a little Frank Lloyd Wright creek, but went into our drain. So we were pretty okay, actually. But we had our neighbors that had, $15,000 deductible for insurance damage. It's pretty terrible. But yeah, we got pretty lucky. We just made a little party of it.
Yeah, you guys got lucky.
We got really lucky. I think there were some believeful angels out there.
Because we're still, you're the same level as those people.
But it did postpone. That's probably why this is coming out a week late.
Yeah, sorry guys, we're a little late.
That and Grandma.
Funeral and flooding.
Yeah.
So.
Dreaded double F.
Because there were helicopters going around all day. I wish we had like a belieful mural on the roof of the...
Oh yeah, by the way, anyone out there that lives on the highway or major trafficked area or has some sort of property where you could just put up a Belieful podcast billboard, take a picture and send it to us. Lifelong Patreon access, free memberships. You can come hang out.
Thanks for all the people that have become patrons.
Yeah, guys, we've got one stinger today, and we are definitely behind on the stingers, as well as we have some call-ins and write-ins. And if you don't hear it today, I know we said this last time, but hang in there. We're going to get to you.
But we appreciate you
We've been
guys.
catching up.
You definitely make us feel like we're on the right track. So you're helping out.
Support.
Speaking of Grandma's death, she always read that creepy poem, that very missing 411-ish poem to us when we go to bed. Do you remember that? She'd always recite that. I thought it'd be kind of fun to just read that before we go out to the
news.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So Grandma used to put us to sleep with this terrifying nursery rhyme, which I looked it up today, and it's from the 16th century by an anonymous poet. But here it is.
Watch your sticky mouth syndrome.
Don't read it in like an old lady voice.
I'm not going to do Grandma's voice. That'd be really creepy. And
Yeah, I wish I had that recording of her. I have it somewhere.
not creepy, but maybe
If we do another 4-in-1 episode, maybe I'll play
disrespectful.
her actual voice. I think I have a
Yeah.
recording.
Okay, this is called The Babes in the Woods by Anonymous.
Tuck in, little children.
My dear, do you know, a long time ago, 2 poor little babes whose names I don't know were stolen away on a bright summer's day and left in the woods, so I've heard people say. And when it was night, so sad their plight, the sun went down and the moon gave no light. They sobbed and they cried and they bitterly cried. And those poor little babes, they laid down and died. And when they were dead, the robins so red brought strawberry leaves and over them spread. And all the day long they sang their sad song. Poor babes in the woods, poor babes in the woods. Now don't you remember those poor babes in the woods? Good night, Jeremy and Chris.
Yeah, don't get out of
Good
bed.
night, John.
Because people die in the woods.
I'm going to bed now.
Well, that's what we found out later. She was like 94. We were talking about how she used to tell us that story. She's like, well, I said that, so you'd be too afraid to get up and go out and explore.
Strawberry leaves. That's a weird thing to cover.
Yeah, although I think in her version, she used to say...
stuck out to you? Strawberry. I wouldn't have used strawberry.
It was mulberry leaves in her
it
version.
seems like a lot of strawberries to cover someone with.
they're
Those
little-
leaves are tiny.
They're 2 little babies.
Well, that's all the birds had access to.
Oh, the poor babes.
What a creepy thing to give your... I guess all those nursery rhymes back in the day were pretty creepy, though.
And scratch your boots, your butter box, you get down. Keep you cold leg day.
That was a good call-in.
Oh, that was John leaving you a voicemail?
Yeah, it was a wonderful voicemail from John. John leaves the best voicemail.
When was that left?
Oh, years.
Years ago. I'd saved it years ago.
You just came upon it again?
Yeah, play it one more time.
And scratch your boots, your butter box, you get down. Keep you cold leg day.
It sounds like to me is
Means
like
nothing.
It sounds like a surfer that was taking a big wave and cracked his head and is dying and doesn't realize he's dying, and so he's saying like, "Hey, meet me at the fish shop. I'll see you get some burritos," and then he just dies. But like all he's just gibberish because his
All
brain's
coming
broken.
out.
He's
And
bleeding
scratch
out of his
your
ear.
butter box, you get down. Keep you cold leg day.
And he's dead.
That's funny.
Someone needs to animate that. Okay, guys.
All right.
Are you ready to get into it?
All right, now to get
Should I do
focused.
the news stinger?
Yeah, we
do
got
it.
some news, Chris.
Okay, so I'm going to play the stinger, though, and you can intro it underneath the music because it's an extended cut. I'll just
Okay.
fade it out slowly.
Oh, an interesting.
Okay.
Valid news from Belieful, authentic and real.
This comes to us from CNN news release recently, where a very pretentious editor has written a news story about how UFOs are silly in spite of all the recent disclosures.
And
NC.
NC. No, I pulled this off. I wasn't going to do news because this is our topic today is pretty broad, but I'm doing this one because I just came upon it last minute. Yeah, that was a long news little thing there. I got a little perturbed because I saw this article and I was like, man, are you serious at this point? This is what you're going to put out? because all the news coming out lately with the stuff we covered last time.
I've heard a lot
episode,
of people that are. Is it like people that are poo-pooing the Navy stuff?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we covered that last episode with the Nimitz and the USS Roosevelt, all the stuff coming out. There's a History Channel documentary series that's talking about it. And actually on Rogan's most recent podcast, he had Bob Lazar on.
That was interesting.
Yeah, especially the last half. The first half was stuff we knew that we covered. The second half of that was pretty interesting with all the stuff that's about to be coming out. And they touched on the stuff we had covered last episode with the Nimitz and USS Roosevelt.
How did Joe Rogan react to it?
He basically endorsed Bob's point of view toward the end. He's like, listen, I spent time with you here, talked to you here. He's like, I believe you. That was basically one of the last things he says, I believe you. Who knows?
It is a crazy story.
Yeah.
I mean...
And at first, the first half I'm listening to it, I'm thinking, there's moments where Bob, he gets questions and he gets quiet and he gets his migraines that he gets and this and that, where there's empty space where you can see it as like, maybe he's trying to whatever.
Think of something.
But then
before we go any further, can you just do a very, very quick synopsis of who Bob Lazar is for people that don't?
So
check out episode 15.
Yeah, so Bob Lazar, anybody that's into
very brief
into the UFO phenomenon, be familiar with Bob Lazar. He supposedly worked at S2.
S4, isn't it?
Or S4, sorry. S4, a testing site for allegedly extraterrestrial craft in the 1980s. He was the whistleblower for Area 51. We know of Area 51 because of Bob Lazar.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, this guy claims he was dealing directly with UFO aircraft, alien technology,
trying to reverse engineer
with the government.
Right. And then he went dark.
Yes.
He went dark for about 30 years.
He ended up going public because he was getting death threats and getting shot at, supposedly. So he went public to protect his life, but he's a very reclusive person. He never sought out any financial gain from his stories. He wanted to be left alone. He just wanted the information out there as an insurance policy.
He was convinced by George Knapp to come out with a story back then, reconvinced by Jeremy Corbell, this documentary, to come out and talk about it, but he doesn't accept any money for it. He's not writing books and releasing stuff. All the stuff made at that movie that Jeremy Corbell did, the new documentary, all that money he donated to science programs. So he didn't keep anything. His hands are clean.
Yeah, he seems like a very legit guy that honestly doesn't have any real reason to do what he's doing except that he wants to.
Yeah, he said his only regret, really, well, besides all the flack he's gotten for coming out, one of the biggest things he's upset by is the fact that he threw away his chance on continuing to research this cutting-edge technology. He says he doesn't care. He's not interested in UFOs and what that means. He's interested in the technology.
It's an interesting take.
Yeah.
He was on Rogan.
And it was a really good interview, I thought, especially if you can get through the first half, because in the second half, Bob loosens up. He's drinking a little bit of whiskey, so he's more relaxed. He's not as nervous. And then he's quicker responses, and you get a lot of information you haven't heard before. And Jeremy Corbell kind of hints at some things he's going to be releasing coming out here. And it was good. For me, the takeaway was, I believe Bob. I believe his story. Especially considering the stuff we touched on, like the hand scanner, that sort of stuff that came out later, and proven to be true.
Is this the news?
Yeah. Well, we were getting into the news, so I was a little off track.
I was kind of getting lost. Okay.
So the news, the reason why this news article is from CNN. It says why pilots are seeing UFOs, and I was like, okay, this is going to be some sort of skeptical sort of thing.
X-Files fans.
Oh, did you say this is CNN?
Yeah. So, you know.
Most likely it's a weather balloon.
Yeah. So super short. I just want to touch on it because I read it, and it within the first couple paragraphs, which is all I'm going to get into, I'm already thinking okay, this is totally not correct information. This is totally or not investigated. You don't know the story.
It sounds like a child wrote it. That
sounds like somebody who knows nothing about what's actually been going on.
Literally nothing.
All right, this is CNN. Why pilots are seeing UFOs. Over the past 70 years, more than 10,000 similar reports have been made. First of all, similar. There's been a lot of very different reports. Most reports were eventually debunked as weather balloons, the planet Venus, or even oddly shaped clouds. Okay.
What, are they reading books from the 1960s?
Right. So first of all, just to mention Project Blue Book, over 700 entries in Project Blue Book were ultimately unexplained by the investigators.
Right.
So that alone, and there's been so many. Okay, and we'll keep going. Some accounts simply.
Chris has just got a bone to pick.
I got a chip on my shoulder. Okay, some accounts simply arose from nothing more than fevered imaginations of UFO enthusiasts, but not all reports could be dismissed so easily. So this is where he gets into the recent stuff. In 2004, Navy fighter jet pilots operating from the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier reported seeing UFOs off the coast of San Diego. And more recently, other military pilots flying with the USS Theodore Roosevelt in the Atlantic made similar claims. The news of those accounts became public knowledge from a story in the New York Times and a new miniseries on the History Channel. These media and entertainment reports brought the incidents to the attention of government leaders. Okay, so there's my other problem with that. Technically, government leaders were aware of this long before it was released in the media because we had that Pentagon leak, which was about these reports. So that was the government who'd been studying these for at least a decade or two.
Also, the officials involved in the sightings had reported it to their higher command, which is attached to the government. It's not like they watched it on the TV.
Right, well, they were saying the government's unaware until it was coming out.
Because it's in the History
Channel. The government
Channel.
was leading the investigation on these for over 10 years. Anyway, the question that comes to mind is, are these aliens? Sadly, for anyone who is a fan of the television show The X-Files, cue spooky music, it is simply far, far more plausible that what these pilots were seeing is something with a more ordinary explanation, whether it be an instrumental glitch or some other unexplained artifact. Okay, so are you not aware of any of the testimony from these pilots saying they've visually seen craft sitting there for hours over the water or watching spheres flying by in between aircraft? Like, you're talking about digital artifacts. Okay, dude.
Well, they might have, I mean, they might have a point that it may not be alien, obviously.
Right.
But it's not some anomaly at this point.
Right, it's not a radar glitch.
No, that's been thoroughly explained in these releases.
Oh, yeah.
So they obviously didn't do any research. Another big fat F for that.
For CNN.
Terrible
well,
news company.
it's like whoever wrote this article wasn't even reading his own publication because other CNN articles were talking about the details of these witness
literally, the
accounts.
people that are writing these articles, just, I don't know if they're getting them from like high school or
Snopes.
not that high school people are bad. It's just that they're not actually doing any research on the topic.
Right.
It's like it's all propaganda.
Yeah.
or just ignorant opinion. That's what this
Yeah,
felt
it's
like.
a
You're a
opinion piece.
news channel. Like,
Yeah.
you're supposed to at least investigate it. It's like they almost purposefully ignore the information and just write whatever they think.
Yeah, I didn't even read the rest of the article because it was after that first few paragraphs. I was like, there were so many holes in this already.
Right,
So
you're not
if
even worth it.
if anybody out there wants to read the rest of this garbage, it was called "Why Pilots Are Seeing UFOs," CNN article. And I think it came out yesterday, the day before. So
Yeah, whether it's alien or whatever, there's something that's being seen.
Right.
Actually, if you go listen to episode 23, our previous episode, we dig deep into those stories from the Roosevelt and the USS Nimitz and break down what happens when actually play testimony from the pilots and the people involved. And so you can hear the testimony.
anyway, yeah. So I wanted to touch on that for a second just because it irked me when I read that.
I was
Yeah.
irked. I was irked because you read it.
There's a lot of those articles I read about the first like paragraph, and I'm like, there's already three
So many
things
holes
wrong
in
with
this,
this.
or so
It's
obviously.
not even
Yeah.
worth finishing the article.
Anyway, but it does tie into our topic today because we are going to be talking about the Hollow Earth. And there's a lot of suggestion out there that the UFOs, the unidentified crafts we're seeing out there, might be coming from someplace within the planet, not just above.
Right. Well, there's a
good times.
flashback.
That was well timed, sir.
Coming from the inner earth and
Well, do we want to take a break before we get into the first part of the show?
Yeah, do you want me to play the patron stinger now before we go to break?
Oh, we could do that before break.
Sure.
Yeah. Why not?
Just kind of get it out of the way.
Yeah, again, to all of our patrons who have not received one, we apologize for the delay with all the stuff
We
going on.
are going to get on that. It's just been, we've been trying to ramp back up from the break that we had, and we just had a lot of other stuff going on.
It came
so-
from the break and then the catastrophes,
Yeah.
and anyway.
And write-ins, we had a write-in from Leon, and I forget her name, but she actually left a speak pipe about the Limburger baby, or Limburger? Limburger cheese.
Some Limburger cheese and onions.
Yeah, so if you haven't heard that yet, any of your stuff yet, anyone who's listening,
We're getting on it.
Absolutely. So, John, you got a Patreon.
I got a stinger for our cousin, Zebariah.
Oh, Zeb.
And
Zeb
Zeb
guy.
opened up his juicy wallet and threw some money on the Patreon.
we appreciate it, buddy. And we made a little stinger for you.
Excited to hear this.
I miss Zeb.
Zeb, you are a real cool cousin. And I enjoyed my time with you living in Seattle. Zeb, you are a real cool cousin. And we'd like to thank you. We want to thank you. We are thanking you for supporting Belieful.
Well, that was great.
That's awesome.
I didn't. Yeah.
It's great.
It's always weird doing these because, like, I really did that right before I came over, and you're like, I thought it was funny when I was doing it, but you just,
You never know until you hear other people's reactions.
That was great.
They're silly.
That was great.
But thanks, Zeb.
That was a very serious.
And I did enjoy
stinger.
my time with you in Seattle,
Yes, and thank you for
and
supporting.
I miss you. Tell Aaron I said hello too, if you get a chance, if you see him anymore.
That was
All
great.
right.
It's great. I love it. So if you guys want your own customized stinger, so anyone that's a patron up to this point, if you haven't got your stinger, you're gonna get it.
Yeah. The first tier, $3 a month, you get all the extra content on Patreon episodes. But now for the stinger, we had to bump it up to $5 a month because we just can't keep up with the stingers, and people are pitching in with the $5 donation anyway. So I think that's it's a lot of time for John and us when John can't do one or two.
I think people are fine.
Yeah.
I mean, we will get to them.
Right, but just so you know, if you do sign up, read the descriptions on the different tiers, because the $5 tier will get you the super fun stinger.
And as of the date of this release, if you are a patron already, no matter what tier you signed up at, you're getting a stinger.
Yeah.
Because you deserve it.
Let's take a break.
All right, guys.
Bye-bye. And we're back.
Welcome back.
Well, hello again.
John, will you lift up your toes a little bit there? All right. I get my little...
Chris loves when John lifts his toes.
My headphone cable was stuck under...
It's my favorite.
Betwixt
I
his
need
toes
a
on the
little
floor.
toe upliftment.
There are people into that. Anyway, Jeremy, you're getting into...
I'm getting inside the Hollow Earth.
So you're going to be talking about... You're going to get into a little bit of Admiral Byrd stuff, right?
A little bit. So anyone who is yawning right now because they've dug deep into the Hollow Earth, they're leagues below, they've heard Admiral Byrd. Well, you're going to hear him again, friends, okay? You're going to hear him because it's important to the story.
It looks like you're drinking urine.
It does, Chris.
This is good for you.
Doesn't it look like pee?
Yeah.
You reintroduce the urine into your system, and then your body knows what's wrong with you.
I've heard of people doing that.
No, but this is Chardonnay. It's just in a old Frappuccino bottle.
Oh, that's why.
Because I haven't washed my wine glasses.
For those urine therapy curious, all you have to do is drink your own
let's
urine.
get back to... I'm sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted.
All right, so Admiral Byrd, those of you in the know will recognize that name. Brief breakdown of this fellow. So he's the guy that if you search Hollow Earth, you're going to see Admiral Byrd. The actual connection with him in the Hollow Earth is definitely suspect. There are tenuous connections. There's been a biography published by his nephew that we'll get into in a little bit. That's a little airy-fairy if you read some of the text, but it could be him. Okay, so Admiral Byrd, he was an American naval officer. At the time, he was a true American hero. He was the first to reach the North Pole and the South Pole. American aviator, polar explorer, and organizer of polar logistics, served between 1912 and 1947 with some years in between off, served in the wars. But he's the guy you'll hear because of the lore behind him. And to start this off with Admiral Byrd, we're going to play a clip. This is him being interviewed about his polar expedition, specifically to the Antarctic and the South Pole, and referencing the land beyond. And this clip is played a lot if you look up flat Earth videos, Hollow Earth videos, because it talks about a secret land beyond the South Pole.
But he's been an inspiration to countless Americans. Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
This is a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Admiral, do you hope to see that?
I do.
Yeah, so landmass, the size, at least the size of the continental United States, and he goes on in that clip to talk about how rich it is with minerals. He even mentions like coal, the amount of coal that could power the world, how many times over. And he was certain at that point that there were going to be more expeditions by all nations to tap those resources, and we have not had anything.
Yeah, and
go down there.
this was a seasoned naval officer, a seasoned explorer, right? I mean, he'd done a lot of stuff, and I think he continued to do. He did a couple operations after this.
Yeah, okay.
He has a big memorial for him in New Zealand.
Yeah. So yeah, he, like I said earlier, he real true American adventurer hero, the guy that you would look up to if you wanted to, have these kinds of adventures in your own life. But it holds strong in Hollow Earth lore because he references this landmass, this space beyond the pole. And the Hollow Earth theory contends that or at least one of the Hollow theories contends that there is an opening at the North Pole and the South Pole, among other openings, tunnel systems throughout the world. And I have a list of some of those further on. So this is used as kind of evidence for that in a lot of ways. And of course, in this, you can watch the whole interview. We'll have it linked on our website. He doesn't specifically say anything about the hollow earth, doesn't specifically say anything about going into the earth. But there is a book that was released supposedly by his nephew.
Wasn't it his journal, allegedly?
It's called The Missing Diary of Admiral Richard E. Byrd. And it's authored by him and published by his nephew, supposedly. It's called A Flight to the Land Beyond the North Pole, The Missing Diary of Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Now, it's interesting to note that his first Antarctic trip was between 1928 and 1930. It only involved 2 ships and 3 airplanes. That was the first trip. On the second trip was 1934, and he spent 5 winter months alone by himself operating a meteorological station.
Right. So these are missions he's on for the U.S. government. It's not like he's some crazy billionaire like Bigelow or somebody trying to
naval
prove
officer,
something.
Sorry. He's American naval officer.
He's on an expedition for the Navy, for the U.S.
Right.
Okay, continue.
So, he claim to fame was reaching the North and South Pole first.
Right.
The second Antarctic expedition, he spent 5 months alone, where he almost died from carbon monoxide poisoning. And I guess they had heard him on the radio talking and he wasn't sounding quite right, so they went and rescued him. But he's by himself down there.
Yeah, and he's like our age. Can you imagine doing that?
Well, I don't know how old he was at that time.
He's in his 30s.
Oh, is he? So that's all well and good. That's interesting. So that ended in 1934. Now, I'll just read this. There was an operation called Operation High Jump that he led, and that was between 1946 and 1947. And this is the one that always gets referenced because, well, actually, you know what? Let's play the second clip because this is being referenced in this clip, and this clip is from Virgil Armstrong. He's a retired Army intelligence officer. This is kind of a quick summary
these old names.
His biography. So he's Army intelligence, and this is from his author's biography. He was Army intelligence with the country's top intelligence agency for 8 years and 10 years as one of the original Green Berets. As an Army intelligence officer, he was a participant in the USA's first known capture of a UFO.
What?
Yep.
Wait, what's this from?
This is his author's biography.
Okay.
But he was a military intelligence officer. Project Grudge at Sands Proving Grounds.
Okay, I know that.
Yeah, you've heard that. In New Mexico. As an outgrowth of this incident, his research allowed him to uncover further evidence of the UFO phenomenon and eventually become a contactee. So, whether you believe this guy or not, he was military intelligence, and we're about to play a clip where he further describes information he came across while in Army intelligence about Admiral Byrd's original trips. Now, we just heard a little bit about what Admiral Byrd said about it, what he could say. We don't know how much information he could even give. And this is supposedly this guy leaking as an Army intelligence officer what actually happened. So
interesting.
If we can roll the second clip, John.
We were originally talking about the spiriting out of the 2 spacecraft out of Berlin before the Allies arrived. We said that they were put aboard 2 submarines. They spent 6 months at sea, and they finally landed in Argentina. Now, from that point, they were taken into Antarctica, into a section of Antarctica called Queen's Maud's Land. And there they disappeared, and they were not heard of for some time. Now, intelligence sources, and of course I was in the intelligence business at that time with the agency, reports indicated that they were in there and they were operative once again. Now, there was a major concern by world powers to go in and capture the technology and the 2 spacecraft which they knew were in Antarctica. And the intelligence reports indicated that one known as Admiral Byrd was to be recommissioned, and he was to be sent in there to retrieve the 2 saucers and also the technology and personnel associated with it. Later reports indicated that Admiral Byrd was given 8 months and unlimited funding to go in and pull this thing successfully off. But we also know that within 8 weeks he was totally defeated. Now, the supposition at that point was that there was an advanced civilization and technology, most probably alien. There were with the Third Reich and the SS who was in Antarctica, and that those great and developed technologies were used to defeat Admiral Byrd. And of course, as it turns out, even to date, they're still there. We never did successfully get them.
Wait, well, okay.
So this starts to tie into whole other rabbit holes.
We're tying into Nazi,
Nazis,
UFO, Antarctica stuff.
Yeah, so this will tie into, which we should cover at some point, maybe another episode. Well, first of all, Hitler's supposed escape to Argentina, their work going into the South Pole, their use of advanced UFO technology, and their connection with the Vril. All these things.
We know Hitler was super into the occult, super into all this kind of stuff.
Well, Himmler and Hess were two guys that were definitely, and they were his advisors.
But let's back up.
Okay.
So let's back up.
Back me up.
So this guy speaking is someone who supposedly worked for the military intelligence.
He did.
That's confirmed for a long time, right? High up. And then at some point he leaks this information about Admiral Byrd's mission actually being less exploratory, more about reconnaissance for alien craft.
Okay, so the idea is, and the reason I was reading kind of a background on his previous two Antarctic expeditions is because they were very light. The first one was a few ships and a couple planes. So when they go back, whatever they supposedly, I mean, you could guess based on what he's described there, the amount of land there, and how minimal the original expeditions were. After World War II, so those were before World War II, right? After World War II, after the Nazis, after supposedly, as some believe, the Nazis went to the South Pole to potentially search for Hyperborea and the super race that lived in the inner Earth and make contact and build civilizations, all that. After World War II, Admiral Byrd leads an operation called Operation High Jump. Now, this lasted from 1946 to 1947, so right at the tail end. So he goes down there. Now, I said it was a very small contingent initially, the early expeditions. When he goes down there to lead this, quote, scientific expedition called Operation High Jump, he takes with him a task force of 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft.
What? For
to the Antarctic.
Scientific expedition?
Right. The primary mission, according to Wikipedia, is to establish...
That sounds like you're colonizing
You're right. According to Wikipedia, the reason for the expedition was to establish an Antarctic research base.
4,000 something? That's like half the population of this town.
Yeah, and it was going to be called Little America.
Did you hear that John Kerry went to Antarctica the night before the 2016 election?
No, but I know that a lot of people have gone. Like a lot, like the Pope,
during
I
important
think.
Events. Or?
Yeah, and people in the flat Earth community get into all that stuff too because you have the Antarctica Treaty.
He was going to go off for like sacrifice to the Vril Society up in Antarctica,
maybe. Or the Thule Society. Yeah. So okay, now this is what's interesting too. So in the official story, like I said, there's this massive contingent of warships and planes going down there. According to the fellow we just heard,
and this is official, right? This isn't rumored. The expedition.
Well, the expedition is real,
and it's
it's officially
it has
confirmed.
That complementary of officers. And people.
4,700 men.
That's crazy.
What did I say? 13 ships and 33 aircraft. Operation High Jump was. And someone made the point before that this is after World War II. A lot of battleships and stuff are being decommissioned because the war is ending or over, right? So everything's being put down. And yet we take this seasoned admiral to go down to the Antarctic with 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft. And you tie that together with this guy, if you want to believe him, from military intelligence, suggesting that he's read papers and had information saying that they were chasing Nazi submarines that were carrying UFO craft, and they encountered this advanced civilization that the Hollow Earth theorists contend are from inside the Earth, from the place where the Nazis were supposedly searching to find that inner Earth of,
Agartha.
They called it Hyperborea. On the official record, people died. So you hear the quote conspiracy story that there was a fight. And Admiral Byrd's army,
like between the Nazis and Admiral Byrd's?
Well, I think the Nazis were allied at this point with the Inner Earth folk, supposedly, and there was a fight. There was a fight with, or whatever force it was. There was a fight with Admiral Byrd's contingent that went down there, and Admiral Byrd lost. Is the idea. And so to kind of back this up, you did have people die down there. I mean,
yeah, but it was like 3 dudes, right?
It was 3 people. Well, that officially died
out of 4,700.
Well, we have reports of, like how many cosmonauts died before the first one actually made it to space. We never heard about it till years later. How many people actually died? You don't know. But these are the official human losses. On December 30th, 1946, aviation radio men Wendell K. Henderson, Frederick W. Williams, and Ensign Maxwell A. Lopez were killed when their Martin BPM Mariner George I crashed during a blizzard. So that's the official story. The other fella, Vance N. Woodall, died during a, quote, ship unloading accident. In a crew profile, deckman Edward Beardsley described his worst memory as when Seaman Vance Woodall died on the Ross ice shelf under a piece of roller equipment designed to pave the ice to build an airstrip. So those are the official stories of how these folks died. And obviously totally possible. But the massive size of that army going down after the war, when a lot of things were being decommissioned at the time for a, quote, scientific expedition, and then the subsequent deaths, and then finally the diary that came out. Now, this is the part that is obviously
contentious,
the hardest to swallow, I think. This is supposedly published by Admiral Byrd's nephew, I could not find his name. I found the publisher that put it out and stuff, but I couldn't find. I saw these references to it being his nephew. But it's called A Flight of the Land Beyond the North Pole, The Missing Diary of Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Would you guys like to hear what Admiral Byrd experienced? So this is beyond supposedly the North Pole, where he actually entered into the Hollow Earth.
Let's hear it. I want to hear this. Is it colorful?
Oh, yes. Do you want to hear what it's like inside the North Pole?
Two at once.
Two at once.
What?
That's a whole reference.
It's an inside joke, which doesn't bode well for our on-air listeners right now.
Not. Okay, so I bid you welcome to our domain, Admiral.
Oh, wow. There's actually dialogue quoted in this supposed journal?
Well, obviously he would have conversation.
I bid you welcome into our domain.
Yeah, this is from, I mean, I found this on a website quoting this is from the book, so this should be from the book. But I bid you welcome to our domain, Admiral. I see a man with delicate features and with the etching of years upon his face. He is seated at a long table. This reminds me of like Lord of the Rings, when you see Eldaron or whatever his name is. Eldaron. He motions me to sit down in one of the chairs. After I am seated, he places his fingertips together and smiles. He speaks softly again and conveys the following. We have let you enter here because you are of noble character and well known on the surface world, Admiral. Right? Sounds believable. Surface world, I half gasp under my breath. Yes, the master replies with a smile. You are in the domain of the Ariani, the inner world of the earth. We shall not long delay your mission, and you will be safely escorted back to the surface, and for a distance beyond. But now, Admiral, I shall tell you why you have been summoned here. Our interest rightly begins just after your race exploded the first atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. Now, this is connected to all the, I think this was published in the 60s when you get like the UFO, the contactees saying,
right.
UFOs are here to stop the nuclear proliferation.
I've heard that.
Trend.
Yeah, maybe it was. So this is the best part. It was that alarming time we sent our flying machines, the, quote, Flugelrads, to your surface world to investigate what your race had done. That is, of course, past history now, my dear Admiral, but it must continue on. You see, we have never interfered before in your race's wars and barbatry, but now we must. For you have learned to tamper with a certain power that is not of man, namely that of atomic energy. Our emissaries have already delivered messages to the powers of your world, and yet they do not heed. Now you have been chosen to be witness here that our world does exist. You see, our culture and science is many thousands of years beyond your race, Admiral. I interrupted. But what does this have to do with me, sir? The master's eyes seemed to penetrate deeply into my mind, and after studying me for a few moments, he replied, Your race has now reached the point of no return. For there are those among you who would destroy your very world rather than relinquish their power as they know it.
Ooh.
So it doesn't really sound like how the guy we heard talking earlier in the video would actually write.
Well, yeah, and I read a couple of his journal entries about like longitude, latitude stuff when he was seeing the sunset, that kind of stuff. Very matter of fact. He wasn't quoting dialogue from comrades or whatever.
Yeah, the Admiral Byrd connection, especially with this diary, to me is thin.
Suspect.
Mm-hmm. I think the best connection is, you get the guy who has the actual military credentials, military intelligence, saying, we've had papers saying he did have an encounter. And maybe that came out and someone wrote this book based on that military guy coming out.
It could be a fictionalized account.
And it could be someone purposely making it ridiculous so that no one believes it.
It's hard
there's the
to know.
disinfo twist. Yeah, it's hard to know.
Either way, I think we can probably safely say that those are not his actual entries in his journal.
It didn't sound like him.
No.
It's also not impossible, but
It's also not to take away from the possibility of the inner Earth, the possibility that he did see something that he said
it
he saw.
does seem like it's good disinformation.
Right. But I want to say, so the Hollow Earth theory, this didn't start with Admiral Byrd.
Right.
Admiral Byrd was a more recent connection to this idea being real. But
Is it biblical at all?
Actually, there are biblical references. I mean, you have the references with the firmament and the waters being separated by the firmament, the water from the water above and below. Oh, okay. So before I get into the historical references, I think it's probably most important to talk about the recent discoveries. Okay, so coming up after the break, which we're not breaking right now, but coming up after, I want you guys to stick around because we have compelling evidence that suggests that this is completely possible. There being an inner Earth or some kind of habitable space below the Earth's crust.
Recent discoveries, one of which we touched on synchronistically in the last episode, but some interesting things that are coming out. They're like, is it actually possible? Some things that I normally would have questioned, like how could there be a case that there's a star in the center? Things like that, where like now there's research coming out saying it's there's at least some clues to saying
Yeah,
it's potentially possible.
we're going to get into that after the break. But before we get to the break, I'm just going to go over some historical connections, because all throughout history, you have cultures, civilizations that believe that their ancestors, people that brought them knowledge and civilization, came from inside the earth. And we have references all throughout history of people, like we talked about before, people that have supposedly escaped catastrophe on the surface that went underground.
Right.
Like, these ideas of Atlantis and Lemuria that, had to abandon ship and go under the earth, create cavernous cities. These are explored through history.
Right.
So I'm going to just go over a couple here that I think are pretty interesting. So some historical examples. Okay, so this is from the most basic. Sorry, I was talking a lot. This is from the most basic, some of the most basic references, just for time to get these together. Some of these are from Wikipedia.
Yeah, just list them out. Let's hear them.
But these are accepted ideas of mythological history. So
I know you had a preamble before you were going to start.
Sorry, do you not know Jeremy? He always has to.
I wanted to let people know where it was coming from.
Okay, no, that's good.
Okay, so in Celtic mythology, there's a legend of a cave called Cruachan, also known as Ireland's Gate to Hell, a mythical and ancient cave from which, according to legend, strange creatures would emerge and be seen on the surface of the earth. There are also stories of medieval knights and saints who went on pilgrimages to a cave located in Station Island in Ireland, where they made journeys inside the earth into a place of, quote, purgatory. In County Down, Northern Ireland, there is a myth which says tunnels lead to the land of the subterranean Tuatha De Danann, a group of people who are believed to have introduced Druidism to Ireland and then went back underground.
That's fascinating.
So in this Celtic mythology, these people came from underground. They introduced Druidism to these people, and then they went back underground, just giving a little bit, like the Prometheus, a little bit of the fire of knowledge and then disappearing.
Yeah,
into the night.
Druids were thought to be like the priest status of the pagan societies in Northern Europe that had all these secrets, and when the Romans invaded, they learned there were these kind of mysterious...
Right, they kind of had advanced mystical natural knowledge.
That's where Merlin comes from, the idea of
Merlin and the Stonehenge. It's been equated with Druidism. So supposedly people came from the inner earth and advanced civilization and gave Druidism to the people of Ireland. So that's one connection. The Angami Naga tribes of India claim that their ancestors...
Sounds yummy.
It is tasty. It's a great sushi
Gummy bears.
Their ancestors emerged... Their ancestors emerged in ancient times from a subterranean land inside Earth. The Taino from Cuba believe their ancestors emerged in ancient times from two caves in a mountain underground. Natives of... I'm just going to read them quick here because there's a few to reference. Natives of the Trobriand Islands believe their ancestors had come from a subterranean land through a cavern hole called Obucala. Mexican folklore also tells of a cave in a mountain 5 miles south of Ojinaga, and that Mexico is possessed by devilish creatures who came from inside the earth. In Native American mythology, this might sound a little more familiar, it is said that the ancestors of the Mandan people in ancient times emerged from a subterranean land through a cave at the north side of the Missouri River. There is also a tale about a tunnel in the San Carlos Apache Reservation in Arizona near Cedar Creek, which is said to lead inside the earth to a land inhabited by a mysterious tribe. It is also the belief of the tribes of the Iroquois that their ancient ancestors emerged from a subterranean world inside the earth. The elders of the Hopi people believe the Sipapu entrance in the Grand Canyon exists, which leads to the underworld.
Yeah, I know about that one.
Have you heard of that one?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's Brazilian Indians along the Paraíba River. Ancestors of the Incas supposedly came from caves which are located east of Cusco, Peru, which you've heard has a lot of connections to ancient advanced civilization and structures we can't explain. Did I mention the Hopi, the ant people? These people that have come...
We talked about it in the last episode, I think.
Yeah.
People.
And some say they come from space, some say from the inner earth, or they had to escape a cataclysm and go underground and they build a cavernous city.
Well, and that's what's interesting about all these different accounts from around the world. You think there's a global event, which we hear about and which we've talked about, where there's more and more evidence coming out for some global catastrophe, people going underground, then it would make sense that you'd have all these cultures around the world after the dust has settled, where all these cultures start to populate again around the planet. They all have a similar origin story about their ancestors coming from beneath the earth. It just lends more credibility to the idea.
And they say, hey, by the way, here's how you build a pyramid. Here's how you, you know.
Yeah, it's all due to the same time around the world.
All the similarities with ancient religions and gods and everything across, the oceans, which we couldn't supposedly traverse in the time. Yeah, all those connections. And this is one possible explanation. A guy you might be familiar with by the name of Edmund Halley.
Halley's Comet?
Yep.
All right.
In 1962, put forth the idea of Earth consisting of a hollow shell about 800 kilometers thick. Now, that number might sound interesting.
Yeah.
Right, John?
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I feel like John's like the kid in class who's like,
don't call on me.
Taking a nap. It's like,
glaze over.
Right, John?
Uh-huh. Sounds right.
You've heard of Halley's Comet, right? It goes around.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy who discovered Halley's Comet, named after him, his namesake, He put forth the idea of an Earth consisting of a hollow shell about 800 kilometers thick, 2 inner concentric shells, and an innermost core. Atmospheres separate these shells, and each shell has its own magnetic poles. The spheres rotate at different speeds. Haley proposed this scheme in order to explain anomalous compass readings. This scheme, quote, this is Wikipedia. He envisaged the atmosphere inside as luminous and possibly inhabited, and speculated that escaping gas caused the aurora borealis, which some Hollow Earth believers contend that is what is part of the cause of the aurora borealis.
Yeah, but the problem with that idea is you get the aurora borealis around the world, not just over the poles. Like I've seen it in Columbus with John.
Mainstream science contends that it's coming from the north and south poles. It's the magnetic.
Right, but there are pockets.
Well, I think it just
Where it
reaches down. I don't know that it spits out of it. Maybe.
No, you don't
I
know
anything. I'm not a
anything.
scientist. But anyways, yeah, that's, the Haley's Comet guy, that put forth this idea. But what's interesting is that number, 800 kilometers thick, because what I'm about to get into, which we'll get into after the break, is the new evidence that they found for what exists inside the Earth, and it resonates with that number, which is very odd. That connection.
Dun, 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 dun.
I found a couple connections that I haven't seen anyone put together yet.
Yeah, you did some good research on this,
Chris.
and you found some stuff that's put together made even more compelling. The idea that the potentiality. I don't know where I stand in this theory, but I love the concept. I want a dinotopia to exist underneath our feet, where people are still riding
Dinotopia.
brontosauruses and flying around on pterodactyls.
Primitive monsters.
And Chris Pratt is
He's running around under the earth, fighting velociraptors or befriending them.
Jeff Goldblum never ages.
He's their god.
Okay, so maybe we'll do a follow episode at some point, maybe a Patreon episode, because there's a lot more to get into with the history and some of the connections. We didn't even get into the Vril.
That's
the Thule
that's
Society,
a whole
the
other
Nazi
thing.
connection with the inner Earth, the Tibetan connection. We haven't even been able to touch on that yet. But we have more to get into that's more current after the break.
Yeah, I think you can leave it by saying there's a lot of cultural references to an inner Earth. There's a lot of compelling history related to governments, warring factions, the Nazis looking into this stuff with the Vril Society and the Theosophists talking about inner Earth and how they could use that to their benefit, making contact with people living underground. That's a whole other thing, though.
The history of like Nietzsche and the Supermensch or the Superman idea came from the idea of this race existing under the earth, which obviously Hitler was inspired of the super race,
Right.
which is why he tried to make contact. People believe that the Dalai Lama is supposed to be the earthly emissary of a greater society under the earth. All these connections you don't hear about on the day-to-day. So maybe we'll get into that at some point. But yeah, I think we're probably getting ready to take a break here and come back. We're going to get into some more recent evidence of the hollow earth.
Yeah, some recent evidence and just like one or two quick encounters from contemporary times about crazy entities they've experienced while trapped underground.
Ooh, crazy entities.
Yeah.
Creatures. Well, stay tuned, guys. We're going to get into it.
You guys want to guess the sound?
Ooh, before the break, we're going to play a little guess the sound?
You're not going to fart into the microphone, are you?
No.
Okay.
Gross, Chris. Why would you even say that?
Occasionally, I'll find a weird sound, and I do a lot of pitch shifting for my job. so-
John has been waiting for half an hour.
Yeah, he's been focused on this the last hour.
No, actually, I just remembered it. You fuckheads.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I'm just gonna play this and tell me if you can guess what the scenario is.
Okay, I'm excited. You pitch shift it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's lower than... Is that Mom?
Is it a social justice warrior protest?
No.
Someone saying nice? Is it...
Hold on, let me hear it. The train? No. Oh, it's a goal?
Yeah, it sounds like people cheering at a sports game, maybe?
I mean, you're in the ballpark.
On the ballpark?
But
Is it a ballpark?
No.
It's a baseball game.
Would you like?
People are intense.
Would you like me to
Give us a clue,
Give
John.
us a clue.
How about I go up a couple semitones?
Sure. Do the semitone rise.
Sounds like lizard people eating people underground. Thunder?
All right.
Soccer game?
All right, let's go up to the full pitch and see what it is.
Okay. I'm really curious now.
I bet you are.
Oh, so curious. Do it.
This better be good.
Where is it?
Big reveal.
Where is it? Oh, this is it. Okay. Okay, ready?
Ready, do it. Oh, it's little kids.
It's kids.
Little babes in the street.
Did you record that?
No.
It sounds so much angrier when they're pitch shifted
I
down.
know. It just sounded like when I pitched it down, it just sort of popped in my head. It'd be kind of fun every once in a while if I find a weird sound and it's pitched down just to guess
Try
what
to guess
is.
it? Yeah. I wish we could do that live.
I was waiting for like a big reveal there.
Well, we might be able to with the. We should talk about the live
Oh,
cast.
yeah. Okay, so guys, if you guys out there, guys and gals, if you're interested, we're considering doing something called Livecast. I think it's for the Castbox app. If you guys listen to podcasts, use Castbox, and there's an option now where we can actually stream live and talk to you guys. You can write in, you can call in live. So what we might do is set aside some time where we might do like top 10 paranormal or go over like certain conspiracy theory or theory on something.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun because it would allow our listeners to interact with us live. They can call in through the app or they can text in, and
you can meet a girlfriend.
I don't know how you meet a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Go through the Belief Hole fan club.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be talking to other people.
Dibs.
Well, let's just say that's a thought in the future that we may be moving towards some kind of live interactive stuff.
Yeah, if you guys are interested in that, let us know and we'll get on that.
Not that you need us to meet mates. I don't know why I said that.
That was weird.
So let's take a break.
Yes, let's take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get into some recent evidence of the Hollow Earth, things that point to that possibility being very real.
Yeah, some scientific discoveries that definitely make it seem like it's a little less way crazy.
Yeah, and then Chris has got some creature stories.
Yeah, just very short, really quick.
All right, we'll be back.
We're back. Are we back? Wait, are we back?
I think we're back. We're back.
We're back. We are officially back. From the break, hope you guys enjoyed it. Now, buckle your Hollow Earth maglev belts.
What is a maglev?
I don't. You know, those trains. Supposedly that's what exists in the Hollow Earth.
Maglev? I don't think that's the right term.
Oh, another thing supposedly that exists in the Hollow Earth are computers based on amino acids. So you can like check your health and everything and when you're in your domicile.
What a boring technology.
No, it's awesome because you can see what your health is, but it's also connected to the system. It's a very new agey world down there from what I've read. What are those sounds?
If that's the extent of their new agey technology, is that I can check my amino acid
There's
level?
also really fast elevators and escalators. This all came out in the 60s.
I was going to say, we have pretty fast elevators.
Where do you think we got them from?
Anyways, welcome back, guys. We're about to talk a little bit about
some real strong, compelling evidence for I think, because I found it. And I think it's pretty interesting.
Tell us what you think.
Oh, I thought you said that earlier with your voice. That was
I did.
Oh.
That was a clip.
Oh, okay.
That's good.
Okay, so... Okay, I didn't get into the Theosophist connection. We'll have to do another episode at some point.
You said that already,
I know,
Jeremy.
I'm sorry. I'm just excited about the information I have that I don't have time to say. Okay, so we have some recent news that's come out. And I'm going to touch on first what we touched on last time. But last time we used an article that was from disclosurehistory, I think, .com.
Yeah, I don't know why you always find those weird.
It was quick.
You're like on the dark web.
It looked real, but it was real. It was based on actual reports that had just been reworded by someone who obviously is invested in this
usually
story.
what I do is if I come across an interesting
is
article
what you do?
that's on like...
Okay, Mr.
That's on like UFO fun time.
Oh, is this what you do? Oh, good. Okay.
I'm just saying, usually if I come across something that's on a website that's like UFOfunfuntime.com or something, or like crazy.
Oh, really? UFO fun
Yeah,
time?
you go for the other sources.
Then I just look for that heading.
I know.
And look for some
That's
actual
but it was
news articles.
It was quick at that time, okay?
Anyway, continue, sorry.
Jiminy Christmas. Okay, so we touched on last episode an article that was based on this actual scientific article. This is from Cosmos magazine.
I thought you said like a legitimate...
It is. It's Cosmos. I mean, this is also in scientific...
Cosmopolitan?
Cosmo
America.
Kramer's magazine.
As in the Cosmos, as in like... who's that guy we like that sounds like the...
Neil deGrasse?
No, the guy from Mr. Rogers of Science sounds... Mr. Anderson. The Earth is 700 miles wide.
Okay, the great...
That's something he would say.
What's his name?
Yeah, well, the great guy from Nova. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know.
Carl Sagan.
Carl Sagan.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
thank you.
Okay.
The wonderful late, great Carl
Anyway,
Sagan.
so this is from Cosmos the science of everything. This is a legit. Okay. And it's referenced from real cited sources, which we cited in the last article. Thank you. Okay, so this is called Mountains Taller Than the Himalayas Found 660 Kilometers Underground.
Right.
Now, this may sound familiar if you listen to the last episode.
Especially if you're binge listening, which a lot of people have been doing.
Mountains taller than the Himalayas found 660 kilometers underground. That number, 660 kilometers, will be important, so keep that in mind, guys. Earthquake data leads to a reevaluation of the Earth's mantle structure. Seismologists have discovered huge mountains 660 kilometers underground following a massive earthquake in Bolivia. The nature of the Earth's interior has long been debated by scientists given the difficulties of imaging the different layers. Using the shock waves caused by massive earthquakes and a global network of seismic instruments, a complex of terrain mountain ranges have been revealed. This is known thanks to research published by Wenbu Wu, which you may remember from our last episode.
Yeah, that name.
Seido Ni and Jessica Irving as part of a collaboration between Chinese Academy of Sciences and the University of Science and Technology, both in China and Princeton University. The findings published in the Journal of Science show that it is possible that these mountain ranges are larger than the Himalayas or the Rockies.
It's crazy.
Their depth is significant. The 660-kilometer boundary, which lies between the planet's upper and lower mantle, also contains areas that were much smoother, in the same way that mountain ranges and abyssal plains feature on the Earth's crust. In other words, there's gigantic mountain ranges, open tracts of land and plains, maybe meadows? Who knows? Maybe
that's so hard to believe.
Maybe Brontosaurusi?
It's so hard to believe, but it's weirdly normal in my mind. Maybe that's just because I've heard of this concept before.
Because you're weird?
But can you imagine, like, does this include a sun then? I guess there has to be.
Okay, well, that goes into the hollow earth theory.
Well, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But isn't that what we're talking about right now?
Yeah, but this is mainstream. I mean, this is what we're talking about now. They haven't.
This is mountain ranges underneath the earth, is what they're saying.
Yes, mountain ranges and open tracts of land. I keep saying that, but it's
open
plains.
tracts of land.
So plains.
Yeah, John, I don't know if you were here for the last episode.
So what does that mean, though? Is that like there's like what's the distance between?
What's the open space?
Yeah,
basically?
like height.
Okay, so this is the thing. Since the mountains are higher than the Himalayas or the Rockies, higher than Everest,
right?
And then the base is a plain of land.
To have that mountain difference, you have to have open area between the mountain and the plain.
And the numbers that we've heard are, what is it? Is it 200% more atmosphere? Is that what it was?
So the idea is that, our sky, right? Our atmosphere goes about 20 miles. This is starting to indicate that the open space, and which we will get into, maybe potentially atmosphere.
Which would be sky if you were there.
Would be, instead of 22 miles, 800 miles of open sky. So imagine when you go out and you're playing soccer and you're 8 years old and you see those giant, beautiful clouds before all the chemtrails. And they all look like mountain ranges up in the sky, these deep, deep, huge. This sky looks high, right? When you've got those cumulonimbus thunder clouds rolling in over the plains or wherever you live.
Cities
you
in
see
the
those,
sky.
it looks like this expanse of huge space. Apparently, inside the Earth, according to some of these new studies that have come out with these seismic investigations, things like that, that distance is hundreds of times higher than what we see in our sky.
How is that? I don't understand how that's possible.
Because the depth of these mountain ranges and plains are deeper than we are to our own atmosphere. Because our own atmosphere only goes up 20 miles, 22 miles. So the depth of these mountain ranges are 400 miles.
Imagine if there is light down there, an atmosphere, you're standing at the base of the mountain looking up, it's more sky than we have here. But it's not so claustrophobic anymore when you think about caverns in the earth.
That always threw me about this whole theory is I don't get, even if there was like space underground, it would feel claustrophobic. It'd be tight in there.
Right.
But then when you realize that our own atmosphere is only 22 miles before you hit space.
Right.
And the inside of the earth is a lot more room.
Which is
then
so
it kind
bizarre.
of changes the feeling of the concept. To me.
Oh, for sure.
Which is why, and you had like Haley earlier, I referenced that scientists who believe that we live in spheres within spheres or shells of a sphere within, which, maybe there'd be one above us,
right?
In that theory.
Anyway, continue on.
Okay,
that's
so
interesting.
Moving on. So we found that we talked about that in the last episode a little bit. I heard when we were researching for the Hollow Earth, we listened to Brooks Agnew, who's a guy who was in charge of an expedition that was supposed to go find the entrance at the North Pole to the Earth. I think chemistry. He's an engineer.
Yeah, he has his degree in chemistry.
But he was discussing, the current model and things, and he referenced a study where they found seismic readings of water lapping under the Earth, ocean-sized. And so I was like, that sounds crazy.
Bigger than the Atlantic.
Bigger than the Atlantic. So I was looking for evidence of that, and I found this article, and this connects with what we just talked about in a way that I haven't heard anyone connect yet. So the title is Pockets of Water May Lie Deep Below the Earth's Surface. This is from Science Magazine. Does that sound more legit for you, Chris?
Sure.
It says science right on
Science
it.
right there.
It's science.
Small pockets of water exist. Okay, so in the beginning they say small pockets, but listen to the end. Small pockets of water exist deep beneath the Earth's surface, according to an analysis of diamonds belched from hundreds of kilometers within our planet.
Yeah.
Just like that. The work, which also identifies a weird form of crystallized water known as Ice 7, suggests that material may circulate more freely at some depths within Earth than previously thought. Quote, these diamonds seem to be returning confirmation and a few new surprises of what's happening deep within the Earth, says Stephen Shirley, a geochemist at the Carnegie Institution for Science in Washington, D.C. One of the biggest surprises he suggests is evidence for the presence of unbound water exists at depths below 600 kilometers.
Right, the same area.
660 kilometers is the mountain range. With the plains, now they're finding what's referred to as unbonded or unbound water freely flowing at the same depths that these mountain ranges and plains exist. In other words, we may have lakes, oceans at the same depths as these mountains and plains. You have an ecosystem at this point.
So this is being done through seismic studies?
Yeah, basically.
Do you know how deep this is?
So far,
I mean, they can't get to these, can they?
No,
we've only drilled, like physically drilled 8 miles. They use,
That's pretty crazily
what's it
deep,
called?
though.
Spectrography or spectrographic analysis that has found this. There's seismic readings. They use all kinds of stuff to get deeper than we can actually physically drill.
Right.
Yeah, so an earthquake will happen and the waves will pick up and read and they will show like almost like a radar or sonogram.
Yeah, remember that great scene from Jurassic Park where...
Or Tremors, anybody? They're under the ground. Get up on your roof, Byrd. Get on your roof, Byrd. They're under the ground. I can't hear you, Valentine.
And then Reba's over there going, what's he saying? It looks like he's upset about something.
Great movie, Tremors. If you guys never seen it out there,
It
Tremors.
sounded like you were complimenting Tremors.
Great movie, Tremors. Good job, man.
Great movie, Tremors.
If you guys haven't seen it, please watch it. It's awesome. Kevin Bacon in all his sizzly glory. Okay, so to finish that article.
I like that sound.
Yeah, I like it too. It's very
therapeutic.
Soothing. Okay, so the identification of ice inside those diamonds provides scientists with more than a nifty new mineral. This water, rather than being chemically bound in rocks in combinations called hydrated minerals, is free-floating and remains liquid. Despite the high temperatures found in the mantle, they believe, the layer sandwiched between the Earth's crust and core. This is important. The team's analysis suggests that some of the diamonds they studied formed at depths between, get ready, 610 and 800 kilometers below the Earth's surface.
Right at the same smack in place.
660 is where we find the mountains and plains. 800 kilometers that they're referencing here is what Haley said for the Hollow Earth, that same depth. The first direct evidence of unbonded water at such extreme depths. Nevertheless, the new research doesn't help pin down how large those pockets are or how common they may be. So at the beginning of this article where it says small pockets of water, you read down and it says, this research doesn't explain at all how large these pockets of, they could be oceans.
If they're picking up readings of waves crashing, you need at least like a Great Lake size, right?
Well, you would think, and that's not from this article, but it's, I've heard it elsewhere, but the fact that at the beginning of the article it says small pockets of water, yeah, it's cool, but it's not a lot. And then at the end it says, we can't really pin down how large these pockets of water are. You know, it could be, who knows how large. It could be oceans and lakes. We have the mountains, we have the plains.
Right.
What else do you need?
Well, what you need,
Yes,
else
Chris?
you need is a light source, right? You need light, you need atmosphere.
Are you going to give us a sun, Chris?
I'm going to give you a sun.
We need a sun.
Get ready, let there be light.
We're going to make a hip-hop song.
I was trying to do like a whistle, like I'm excited.
It's the weirdest excitement I've said a word.
Well, I want, like if I were to blow my fingers really hard. Yeah.
I can't do that either. People do it in the movies to get a taxi.
I love that you've never been able to do that, but you still try. All right, Kate, this is long.
Moving along. So, Chris, give us a sun. How do we get a sun down there?
So we mentioned him just for a second, John. Brooks Agnew's a guy who's trying to get expedition launched.
I've heard of this going on for a long. Is he never going to go, or is he going to go?
They keep trying to get funding.
He had a lot of funding in 2007.
I thought you weren't allowed to go there, though.
Well, hold on, let me finish.
Okay,
2007,
sorry.
he had a lot of funding backing him up. They were getting close to their goal. Then what happened? 2008. What happened in 2008?
The financial crisis.
Recession. Everybody bailed on the funding because no one had extra money.
Bad
to spend
mortgage
anymore
lending
on Hollow Earth ideas. So everybody's just like, I got to pay my rent, which is understandable. So recently he's got a new expedition lined up, and then they're taking a different avenue, and they're in talks with Netflix, Amazon, Hulu to do a TV series where they fund the expedition and use it to pay for they're renting a Russian icebreaker that's like a $2 million ship. That's nuclear powered, so they don't have to stop for gas.
They're trying to find the entrance at the North Pole, right? That's the idea.
Anyway, but this guy, I mean, he's the guy to go to if you want to hear the latest research on Hollow Earth stuff. He knows this stuff. I was listening to an interview recently about, I think, one of the biggest questions when it comes to the Hollow Earth. How do you have a civilization inside the Earth when you're cut off from light, when you're cut off from plant, photosynthesis, things like that? How do you grow things?
Right.
How do you breathe down there?
Are you talking about a human being, like
intelligent
life?
Intelligent life.
Because there's ways beings can survive at the bottom of the ocean without light at all.
Yeah. But advanced civilizations, I guess, is the thing.
Well, they say that some suggestions of discovered mammoths that are so well preserved. Some of the early Hollow Earth theories also started because, or were enriched because they would find these mammoths that are so well preserved right near the North Pole. The idea was that they were actually coming from a warmer climate that had been observed by pilots and people testifying to this inner Earth where there's a warm tropical climate with a large atmosphere, maybe less gravity.
Right, where
they could keep things alive like mammoths and things. And they break off from an ice flow. They flow forward, they're discovered in the snow, and we think, oh, this is just perfectly preserved millions of years old, when possibly in reality, they're actually just floating away from that opening at the North Pole.
Yeah, where they existed in a place that was cut off from catastrophes that we experienced. So there still exist millennia-old species that are still roaming.
Right.
So this is what he says about when it comes to the idea of having a sort of sun sort of situation down below, which to me I think is one of the hardest things to swallow. In 2012, in Hamburg, Germany, this is kind of a paraphrase from his interview. In Hamburg, Germany, and a lab in Washington, D.C., they both built labs that had a diamond anvil in 2012. This allowed them to learn how to smash iron in between the diamond anvil to the pressures equaling what they expect the interior of the Earth would be like, at least at the core, and beamed lasers through the diamond to heat it up. They were able to duplicate the thermal conductivity of the iron, which produced about 6,000 degrees Celsius, which is the same temperature as the sun. So now you have a solid iron crystal about 1,200 miles in diameter that puts off a white light in the iron wavelength, which is suitable for photosynthesis, which gives you plants. Yes, good class.
Science, Chris.
Now you have an ocean. Now you have an atmosphere. Now you have light. Now you have all the makings of everything you need for life in that situation. And that's what we're discovering right now is what we have down there is this called a core.
Yeah.
But now we're realizing that there's this open expanse. It is something that's giving off a white light and UV rays that are giving enough for photosynthesis. It wouldn't be exactly like our light. It would be, I think they were talking about, it'd be more of like a red hue. But you could grow plants down there. You could have oxygen. You'd have an atmosphere.
That's so bizarre, dude. Sorry, this is an anecdote, but I was talking to my girlfriend last night about this. Her sister brought up that Jess had a dream 5 or 6 years ago where she went inside the Earth and she was taking pictures, and they're like, sorry, miss, you can be here, but no photos, please. So she puts the camera away. But she said, well, the odd thing is that it looked just like the Earth. There were cities, land she could see, and there were people there, but the light was red.
Oh, really?
Reddish color. And this is before she looked into Hollow Earth or anything.
Yeah.
Maybe in that previous episode where she talked to
Dogman,
the Dogman god of
Anubis.
Egypt, Anubis, maybe
he imparted some wisdom.
Some Hollow Earth wisdom, because the Egyptians have a connection to the Hollow Earth too, which we'll get into another time.
Well, I'm sure if it's an ancient civilization, then they probably know a lot more about it than we do, if it's real.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at what the Library of Alexandria destroyed all that ancient knowledge. Maybe.
Yeah, isn't there supposed to be tunnels from Agartha, the inner Earth capital, leading to the foot of the Sphinx?
The foot of the Sphinx to, you have tunnels going up through Brazil, the Mammoth Caves in Kentucky, which we still haven't charted. We still haven't gone deep enough into those to see where they end.
There's so many places around our world that are unexplored, especially when you talk about depths of cavernous caves and tunnels, and we just can't get to. Or even there are places that divers try to get to.
Yeah.
But they just
bottomless.
They'll hit a point where divers just die there, and they put up signs saying, "Don't attempt to go too deep here because we've never hit the bottom, and we lose people every year."
Yeah.
So who knows?
Mel's Hole, if anyone listens to Art Bell, because that's a classic story.
I think the takeaway from all this is that we always used to think, up until I think it was, when we were in school, this was always a thing in the textbooks, but they're changing it now, where it used to be the Earth is solid, that the pressures are too intense, the heat's too intense for anything to exist down there, and now there's multiple disciplines rethinking the interior of the Earth. Multiple scientific disciplines working together for the first time to try to figure out how the Earth was actually created, how things actually are working down there, because it's no longer the idea of just this solid, unmoving mass of whatever.
The water
occasional
cycle connects now the underwater oceans to our oceans, and this continuous undulation of movement of water, and who knows where that water goes and what civilizations it might be feeding underneath the earth.
Mystery.
Yeah. So we don't know, I think, is the point. Where the more we're learning, the more we realize we don't really know.
Right.
The deeper that you dig the belief hole, the closer you get to the entrance, to the hollow earth.
I feel like an alien is ringing. Like,
you got to call in. Xenu 5 is calling in.
I don't like how you represented my people. We actually are not from inside the Earth. We are from outer space.
Anyway, I think it's a good time to take a break, and then we'll come back with a quick wrap-up here, because there's just a couple interesting anecdotes I want to read, and we can just, have a little chat before we take off.
Okay.
Start our excavation underground.
okay, let's take a break.
All right, we'll see you after the break.
Greetings, humans. We have come to warn you that we can no longer tolerate your broadcasts of daytime TV talk shows or the musical stylings of Drake and Kesha. These transmissions are damaging our world. Our fluvorium fields are depleted, and our goomcloths are no longer pungent in the springtime. We demand that you instead listen to the Belief Hole podcast, a very delightful show. If you do not support the show by way of 5-star ratings, likes on social media, or becoming a Patreon supporter, we will be forced to fill your skies with fire and block out the sun. We will also remove all condiments from your planet, making your meals frustrating and leaving your mouths chalky and gross. You can also share your paranormal experiences by visiting beliefhole.com and leaving a speak pipe. That is all. We leave you now.
All right, welcome back, guys. We're going to wrap up this episode. We're just going to talk a little bit about...
I like how we let people know what we're about to do. We're about to wrap things up, so just get ready.
It's like we're doing the opposite of unpacking something.
We're packing it
back
in.
Let's pack it up.
We're going to tuck you in and pack up what's going to happen.
Okay.
Pack us in,
Pack
Chris.
us up, Chris.
Okay, so there's
gonna be
as
forever.
we kind of talked about before, there's a lot of cultural references to inner Earth civilizations, advanced civilizations, people coming and visiting. You've got religions around the world, ancient cultures around the world that are still in existence today that discuss even the ancienter. That's not a word, but even older,
more ancient
civilizations that all came up and imparted their knowledge and wisdom on our more contemporary civilizations from some long forgotten, buried.
And they might ride dinosaurs. They might
I hope that's
hunt
true.
mammoths. You hear there's stories of malevolent demon-like creatures that live down there, which connect to the idea of purgatory and hell. And that tunnel that was dug, I think there's been recordings of what sounds like a terrifying, screamy place. But then you have the stories...
Terrifying, screamy
place. Then stories of the benevolent life forms that impart knowledge and wisdom and then just watch over you.
It's interesting if you think about it, because all this would take place before one of the more recent, in our times, catastrophes that took place, about $14,000?
Are you talking about the Younger Dryas?
The Unger Dryas or whatever?
$14,000 ago?
$14,000 ago.
Wow, that's like before I was born, because I never had that much.
Wow. Yeah, you have. But if you think about it, everything we've ever learned about in our own, whatever religion you subscribe to, whatever history classes you took about ancient Greece, read books written by Homer, the Iliad, the
Herodotus, Plato,
anything, but all talking about hell, whatever ancient culture is talking about it. Think about it, that all comes after this supposed cataclysm that we all know now, which science is now saying did occur. So this did occur, and now we're finding evidence that Homo sapien or like Homo sapien existed during this catastrophe, and evidence to having civilizations that advanced at that time. Anyway, it's mind-blowing that everything we know that we think is like the cradle of civilization, these stories that are growing in our time period.
They could just be later representations of this earlier
something that existed before.
Race that went underground.
In contemporary times, in recent times, there's been, I'm just going to touch on a few.
Please touch it.
There's been mine disasters where people talk about...
Mind disasters?
Mine disasters, where mines collapse. They get stuck underground. Then they have encounters with different sorts of beings.
Ooh, you got a story?
I do, but I'm not getting super deep into it. I ran out of time. But I'll give you the ways to listen and look more into this. But there's been 2 specific encounters.
Chris gives the way to listen and look.
Listen and look. Follow me. The Shepton mine disaster. Have you guys heard about that?
Oh, yeah. Everyone knows about the Shepton mine disaster.
Yeah, everyone knows about it. In Pennsylvania. These guys were trapped underground. During this encounter, there were these lumberjack type men that came down there and told them everything was going to be okay.
Lumberjack type men?
Yeah.
Like large people? Mm-hmm. Wearing plaid?
And they saw blue glowing entities. At one point, there was a door that opened into the mine that they were trapped in. And there were people riding heavenly chariots and having advanced...
When did this happen?
This was in the 60s, I think.
Okay.
Anyway, again, I don't have all the details on this.
Yeah.
My last minute trying to find some of these stories because it's the last thing I wanted to look into until I forgot. Anyway, Google that. Then the Belleville mine disaster, also more lumberjack-looking people that lived underground that were reassuring people.
Are you talking about like flannel axe carrying?
Yes.
Really?
Burly-esque men, but they're all darkly complected. And I think they have sort of a more of an Asian look to the eyeball.
Oh, that's interesting because some of the guards guarding some of these tunnels, according to some of this Hollow Earth lore, are like darker skinned, large people that are in control of the comings and goings of these caverns and tunnels. That's interesting because it doesn't necessarily connect, but it does.
Well,
with
even
the
you look at
description.
like Men in Black. I mean, a lot of those stories, there's often, you look at Nick Redfern's work, there's often sort of an Asian look to these.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of the kind of the more of the narrow eye. Anyway, lizard people. That's the one thing I'm going to talk about.
Please, lizard people.
So this is a quick, a paraphrased excerpt from.
You better box it down.
That's what they'd sound like. This is from a paraphrase excerpt from an article on mysteriousuniverse.org about lizard people living under LA. They came from an old LA Times article.
How far under, like in Earth, or is this just underground?
Like in the sewer?
You'll hear.
Okay.
So on January 29th, 1934, an article in the LA Times detailed alleged discovery made by geophysical engineer by the name of G. Warren Chafflet. Chafflet, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's how I would, supposedly learned of a subterranean complex from an old Native American named Macklin, which sounds more like a detective from
Burt
the
Macklin?
60s
From the
than it
FBI?
does like a Native American.
Second Chris Pratt reference.
The Native American said there were 3 such lost cities located along the Pacific coast, and that these...
Interesting cadence going on over here.
It's like you're afraid your brain's going to catch up.
No,
that
there's typos in here.
So you know that you're not going to do it right.
The Native American said that there were 3 such lost cities located along the Pacific coast, and that these had been built by a forgotten race, a reptilian race. David Icke, anybody? The legend was that these creatures had retreated underground after a, quote, huge tongue of fire, measuring several hundred miles, wiped out everything in its path around 5,000 years ago. The article describes this complex. The lost city, dug with powerful chemicals by lizard people instead of pick and shovel, was drained into the ocean, where its tunnels began, according to the legend. The tide passing daily in and out of the lower tunnel portals and forcing air into the upper tunnels provided ventilation and, quote, cleansed and sanitized the lower tunnels. Large rooms in the domes of the hills above the city of labyrinths housed thousands of families, quote, in the manner of tall buildings, and imperishable food supplies of the herb variety were stored in the catacombs to provide substance to the lizard folk for great lengths of time as the next fire swept over the earth.
Gayest storyteller ever. Sorry, keep going.
Within this...
I wish we could video this right now. He looks like a retired teacher.
variety.
Within this underground city were supposedly numerous solid gold tablets measuring 4 feet long and 14 inches wide, which were apparently inscribed with the history of the human race, as well as countless priceless artifacts and other treasures.
Okay.
Interesting.
So, I mean, probably bullshit, but it was in the LA Times in 1934.
So a Native American told this guy a story.
Supposedly a Native American named
I
Macklin.
think they say like he went down and witnessed these.
Well, there were later claims that he did do such things, but I didn't get into that
so
stuff.
you didn't get to the actual like fun
The
part.
more I read the more I read, the crazier he sounded. But what I did think was interesting.
What was interesting, Chris?
The part where he talks about the, quote, huge tongue of fire in this, and even if his story is bullshit,
Yeah.
the legend could be very true. I should find out which tribe this was. Of the huge tongue of fire measuring several hundred miles that had wiped out everything in its path, and why it would force people underground.
Well, maybe
because what does that sound like? That sounds like Robert Schoch's theory about those plasma storms that may have caused everybody to retreat underground. You know, were you to get these giant 5-mile wide lightning strikes that would cause people to go underground and hide. Yeah. So that kind of correlates there. I don't know. I mean,
was it the Hopi maybe? Because the Hopi, I think they're the ones that have the Earth was destroyed so many times in cycles. And
maybe.
By fire, I think might have been the last time.
The Hopi have a lot of really cool prophecies. Remember the internet with the web, the giant web encasing the world?
Oh, that was the Hopi? They predicted the internet?
Anyway.
I do remember that.
Yeah. I think we talked about that.
Because that was, I think, one of the 2012, like, everybody gets scared.
It's like a web of
communication.
Yeah, well, that's for sure.
Web.
We are definitely in a web.
Anyway, lizard people, maybe?
Yes, and we are going to do an episode on lizard people. Evil Ed likes it.
Someone commented on that laugh the other day and thought it was
an old woman.
I mean, it sounds like an old
Evil
woman.
Ed from Fright Night.
Fright Night.
Classic 80s film.
Anyway, so yeah, take of it what you will.
Take a vote. Cast your ballot.
If you want to check out some of our research links and links to that Admiral Byrd interview and some other videos we've got going on, go to believeful.com, check out this episode page for the show notes, and you can dig deeper.
And
tell us what you think.
And tell us what you think, Demon John.
Yeah, I hope we laid out some interesting evidence. I think we did.
I love that we do this our own review at the end of the episode. I think that was that good? I think that was good.
Well, did we do it?
Did we do okay? Did we do okay, guys?
Did we do okay?
Twinum. So we're going to have more awesome episodes coming out about interesting, cool stuff. I know it's a great preview. We just touched on, like,
so specific.
We'll be doing more shows of valuable interest to people that may like to listen to more of the content that we produce that should be interesting.
Please come and check in if you have time, maybe look at it. But what's interesting, so when I was going through this inner stuff, even when we were doing the show and I was reading these notes, there were so many points, like I wanted to get into the Vril and the Nazi connection. The reptilians, all the races that live underground, supposedly.
Yeah, we didn't even get into the giants or Jeremy's nightworms.
I do feel like we spend a lot of these times like building the background, but we never quite get to the juicy stuff a lot of the time.
Well, I think there's some juicy evidence in there.
I mean, I'm not saying that it wasn't, but it seems like there's fun. It takes a while to get through like the history and sort of building.
You want to set a bedrock, a foundation for the research and the actual evidence that plays a role in the possible reality of this thing, and we try to do that. And we have a limited time, but we are going to start doing. We've talked about, eventually we'd love to do this full time, release multiple episodes a week. What we want to start doing at some point in the near future is we want to have a plus section where we've done what we just did for you guys and share these stories with you. And then we'll have an additional second half.
Like a deeper dive.
Where we have even more fun going into these concepts and talking about it. It'll just be in a plus section. So if you guys want more content, you can help support us in that way, and then it'll help us to produce more content for the main show as well as the plus.
Yeah, and you know what? If you're listening to this and you like that idea, you like getting extra episodes or an extension onto an episode, and you think you would sign up for that, let us know. We want to know what people think.
Yeah.
I think it would be a good thing, but we want to hear from you. So write us, believeful.com, go to our Facebook page.
Smash the like button if you're on YouTube right now. Smash it.
Smash it. And we're on Instagram. Just check us out in all the places, and but most importantly, stay tuned.
A lot of people, I think, have been sharing the show. I think the people that really do like the show, definitely they feel connected to it. And it seems like there's a lot of people out there that are willing to share our show with their friends. And we really thank you for passing that along to people.
And thanks for connecting with us. Like when we hear stories from you guys and how you're feeling, it makes us feel more connected. Like we're actually talking to you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
And so keep writing in. If you haven't heard your message yet,
leave a speak pipe.
We have a couple speak pipes we need to catch up on, and we have some messages people wrote in. There's actually some corrections that I want to make from our previous DLF Pass episode that someone wrote in about.
Boring.
Some other ideas. No, but there are
traction.
I'm kidding.
Important stuff that I want to get out, and I want to make that connection with people because they took the time to write in and they were good messages.
Yeah, and guys,
so you will hear it coming up.
Yeah, and keep sending in your stories of interest.
Yeah.
You got anything crazy happen to you, weird or
Go
sexy?
to believeful.com and there's a place to record your voices, your stories, and we will play that on the show and do our little thing to it.
Yeah, do our thing to it. So do it, guys, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Wow, is that it? We got the episode recorded.
I think we're good for this episode, and we'll see you next time on
The Believeful.
That was really bad. All right.